Eileen, I'll get Penny back to you. Thank you very much. She made this all possible. How's everybody? Good? All right. I don't know about anybody else, but as I read over the gospel lesson for this week, I could certainly sympathize with Jesus' disciples. So what did the disciples, as we look at them, what did the disciples want from Jesus? What did they want Jesus to do for them? Increase our faith. And I love that there's an exclamation mark. You know, I mean, it isn't just like, when you get around to it. It's like, please, just give me a little bit more faith. Just give me a little more trust, Jesus. Just help me to believe just a little bit more. Can anyone here relate to the disciples' request? I don't know if anybody here has ever had a time in their lives where they ever felt that life was just too much for them at that time. There was too much going on, and there was too much wrong going on. And if we could just believe a little bit more, if we could just have a little bit more faith, then we could make it through. Has anybody else felt like that? I know I've been there. And yet, what is Jesus' response to this desperate plea of just a little bit more faith? Does Jesus increase their faith? Does Jesus even give them a hint on how they can get some more faith? No. I mean, Jesus is pretty unhelpful in this whole, I can kind of get where he doesn't actually just like, so here's some faith for you. But it's hard to say that he kind of picks on them, actually, about it. And it strikes me as unfair. I mean, it seems like this faith stuff is pretty important. After all, as Christians who also happen to be Lutheran, we believe that we are saved by grace through what? Faith. We are saved by grace through faith. Our very salvation depends on our faith. And Jesus isn't going to tell us how to get more of it. I mean, at least tell us how to measure it, right, Jesus? At least tell us how much is enough. How much do we need? How many of us have heard this phrase in our heads? If you only have enough faith, then your loved one will get well. If you only have enough faith, then your finances will stabilize. If you only have enough faith, then you will overcome your addiction or your mental illness. We hear this voice, and we find ourselves lacking. I don't know about you, but I know that I have doubts and worries, and that I wish that my faith was stronger. And I don't know if anybody else does this, but then we start comparing our faith to others. If I could just believe like so-and-so does. And then we start to worry about whether or not others can see our lack of faith, our lack of trust, our lack of belief. And you think, if they only knew my doubts, my worries, my fears, my lack of trust and belief, they'd never let me back into that church. And I'm the pastor. So what is the good news this morning for you, me, and all of us who have ever found our faith lacking and where we want just a little bit more, Jesus? Where is the gospel? How do we know that we have enough faith? And if we don't, how do we get some more? Well, let's go back to our gospel lesson. the disciples ask for more faith, Jesus basically tells them that if they had enough faith, or even faith the size of a mustard seed, right? And most of us know by now mustard seed's pretty tiny. If we even had that, we could tell a tree to uproot itself and plant itself in the sea. If we only had that much faith, or really any faith. Then Jesus, after that helpful answer, he follows up with a kind of bizarre analogy about slaves and their masters. And this sounds terrible to us because we all know that slavery is wrong, bad, and horrible, right? Everybody nod your head, yes, slavery is bad. All right. And yet, Jesus' story is about slaves and masters. And they would have understood that back in Jesus' time. Slaves in Jesus' time had no identity of their own. You didn't have a name. You weren't Jim, you were so-and-so's slave. All right? You existed only to serve your master. They plow the master's fields, they tend his sheep, and then they come in, not to rest, but to continue serving the master by cooking dinner. And the slave is to expect no thanks, no rewards, because it is all about the master. And this sounds horrible, right? Until we look back to the disciples' original request. Increase our faith, Jesus. Help us to believe more. Help us to trust more. Help us to have enough faith so that we are saved. And Jesus tells them this strange story about a slave and their master to remind his disciples, to remind all of us that our faith, our salvation, our hope, all of it is not about us. We each live in a world where we constantly worry, are we enough? Are we skinny enough? Are we smart enough? Are we funny enough? Are we pretty enough? Are we athletic enough? Are we successful enough? The list goes on and on. The good news is that when it comes to having enough faith, Jesus clearly tells us that we don't have enough. We don't even have a mustard seed worth. You cannot believe enough in Jesus. Jesus tells the disciples and us, you cannot trust in me enough. You cannot have enough faith. And yet, in his life, in his death, in his resurrection, Jesus clearly says, I, Jesus Christ, am enough. This is the good news for all of us who have felt far from God or lacking in faith. It isn't about us. It is all about Jesus Christ. It's all about Jesus living, loving, dying, and rising for each of us and the entire world. And you will remember, as we read through Luke, none of his disciples follow Jesus to the cross. None of them have faith that he'll rise from the dead. And none of the disciples believe the women when they come back to them on Easter morning and they say that the tomb is empty. They say, all those women, just an idle tale. It isn't about what we have. It's about who God is. I love Martin Luther's words on this in the Small Catechism. He talks about the Apostles' Creed, about faith. And I'm sure many of you could probably recite this with me. I believe that by my own understanding or strength, I cannot believe in Jesus Christ my Lord or come to him. I love that. I believe that I cannot believe. This is amazing news. Think about it. If our salvation depends on our feelings, our beliefs, our good deeds, we could never be sure of our place in God's kingdom. We could never be sure of God's love and grace for each of us. This morning we hear that God's grace is a free, undeserved gift through our faith. which is also a free and undeserved gift. You don't have to worry if you have enough faith, because through the cross, through the tomb, through Easter morning, God has declared once and forever that you are worth dying for and that you are worth rising for. So where does this good news leave us? I pray that it leaves you with a bit more peace and assurance about God's love for you. I pray that it leaves you with a little bit more just peace about the idea that God has a claim on your life no matter what. I also pray that it humanizes those around us who we might be tempted to envy or lift up as super Christians. Have you ever met those people where you're like, oh, if I could just be like them. If I could just believe like them. And we lift them up so high because their faith and accomplishments are unattainable. One who jumps to my mind is Mother Teresa. How many people are aware of Mother Teresa? And recently sainted. And she did amazing work, right? She worked with the poor, with the sick, with orphans, all around the world, going into war zones to evacuate children, saving and improving countless lives. And yet what happened when she passed away? What was revealed about her own faith? She had lots of doubts. She felt alone. She felt lacking. Mother Teresa knew the truth that it wasn't about her. It was about her Lord, Jesus Christ. And Jesus is enough for all of us and all of our doubts. This truth, this gospel, frees us to live out the last verse of our passage from Luke today. Jesus says, "So you also, when you have done all that you were ordered to do, say, 'We are worthless slaves. We have done only what we ought to have done.'" God's love frees us from worrying about our own salvation and our own forgiveness so that we can do what we ought. Love and serve our neighbors in need. Not because it earns us Jesus points, not because it gets us closer to heaven, not because it makes up for our past sins. We serve, we share, and we love because it simply is what needs to be done. And you know this. And that's what I love about St. Peter's Lutheran Church, is that you have a long history of loving in extraordinarily ordinary ways. Our Sunday school kids right now, many of you know they're raising protein items for our local food bank. And why are they doing this? Because there is a need. There are people in our town who don't have enough to eat. There are kids that go to bed hungry. And just this last month, you donated school supplies to kids with autism and mental and emotional disabilities up at the school at Delayed Run. And you did this not to earn yourself something, not to make yourself feel good, but because they needed school supplies. You donated money to the people of Collinsville in West Virginia, recovering from awful flooding. And you do this not in hope of reward or recognition, but simply because it needs doing. I just want to say thank you. As Mother Teresa once said, it's not possible to do great things. It's only possible to do small things with great love. Amen.